Welcome back, deep divers. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're going deep into influencer marketing.
Okay.
But, and this is the really interesting part to me, we're going to be focusing specifically on how to measure ROI.
I like it.
You know, it's a question we get all the time.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's one that's kind of baffled marketers for years.
Definitely.
So to guide this deep dive, we've got a fantastic master's thesis on influencer marketing strategies by Alma Murillo-Garrido.
Interesting.
Plus, we've got some insightful interviews with marketing experts and even some influencers themselves to round things out.
Ooh, I like that. Getting those diverse perspectives, right?
Exactly. And to top it off, we're going to be dissecting a case study that's sparked a ton of debate in the industry.
Can't wait. Tell me more.
Well, you'll have to wait just a tiny bit longer.
Okay.
But I promise it's a good one. So first things first, let's talk about why this whole ROI thing is such a big deal in influencer marketing.
Yeah, that's a great place to start.
I mean, you see all these brands pouring money into these campaigns, right?
Yeah.
But how do they actually know if it's working?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And it's not as simple as just looking at sales figures.
No, not at all. It's way more complex than that.
Exactly. And our master's thesis really lays that groundwork beautifully, pulling from all sorts of theoretical frameworks.
Yeah. Like what?
Well, for instance, there's the elaboration likelihood model,
Interesting.
which dives into how people are actually persuaded. And there's marketing mix modeling, which helps quantify the impact of marketing on consumer behavior.
Okay.
And we can't forget about the user-generated content theory.
Right.
Which explores how all that content created by users, you know, like those influencer posts, actually influences people's actions.
It's fascinating stuff. You know, when you lay it out like that,
Yeah.
it really highlights how much thought actually goes into this. It's not just about finding someone with a lot of followers and calling it a day.
No, it's definitely not. And the historical overview in the thesis, that was really eye-opening for me, too. You know, it traces the evolution of influencer marketing from those traditional celebrity endorsements, you know, like on TV and magazines,
Yeah.
to this incredibly diverse landscape we have today with all sorts of influencers across every platform imaginable.
I feel like that's a huge part of why this whole ROI question is so tricky. Because it's not just about, like, one-off endorsements anymore, you know?
Right.
It's about building these long-term relationships, fostering authenticity, and really engaging with specific online communities.
Absolutely. And all of that makes measuring the return on investment way more nuanced. So ready to jump into the different ways to actually measure ROI?
I'm all ears.
Okay, great. So the first one, and I think it's something a lot of brands focus on, is brand awareness.
Right. And it's more than just looking at vanity metrics, like how many followers someone has.
Yeah.
We're talking about actual reach. You know,
Yeah.
how many people are actually exposed to the campaign, and impressions, too. So how many times that content is actually displayed. And of course, we got to consider brand mentions. Are people actually talking about the brand? And not just, you know, in any way, but as a direct result of that influencer campaign.
And I love that the thesis also brought up sentiment analysis.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
It's not just about whether people are mentioning your brand,
Okay.
right? But how they're talking about it. Positive, negative.
Huge difference there. Because a negative brand mention, even if it's from an influencer, can actually backfire.
Right, exactly. So sentiment analysis is all about getting a feel for that overall vibe, those feelings towards the brand after a campaign's gone live.
Makes sense.
Okay, so moving on. Another key metric that's getting more and more attention is engagement.
Oh, yeah. And here again, we got to go deeper than just likes.
Way deeper.
Absolutely. We're looking at comments, shares, saves, you know, people actually taking the time to interact with the content.
Right.
Even direct messages. All of those actions show that people are truly connecting with that influencer and, by extension, with the brand itself.
So it's not just about passively scrolling through a feed and double tapping. It's about actual interaction and genuine interest.
Exactly. Now let's talk about traffic generation. This is where we can really start to see how influencers can drive concrete action.
Okay, I'm interested.
Are people clicking through from those influencer posts to the brand's website?
Makes sense.
And once they're there, how long are they staying? Are they bouncing right away, or are they actually exploring the site?
So it's about figuring out if those influencer shoutouts are actually guiding potential customers to the brand.
Exactly. Now, of course, we can't forget about the big one, sales and revenue. This is what everyone wants to know. Are those campaigns actually translating into cold, hard cash?
Right, that's the bottom line for a lot of brands.
It is. And to measure that effectively, We can look at things like ROAS, return on ad spend. For example, let's say a brand spends $1,000 on an influencer campaign and generates $5,000 in sales. That's a 5.1 ROAS, meaning they made $5 for every dollar they spent.
Yeah, that makes it really clear, putting into those concrete financial terms. But here's something I thought was super interesting from the thesis. The idea that you can actually link customer retention to influencer marketing.
Really? Tell me more about that.
Okay, so, we often think of influencer marketing as driving those initial sales, right?
Yeah.
But what if it could actually play a role in building long-term customer loyalty?
Interesting.
So instead of just getting someone to buy once, you're turning them into a repeat customer.
Okay, I see. So how do we actually track that?
Well, there are metrics like the repeat purchase rate and churn rate, which tells you how many customers you're losing over time. And then there's customer lifetime value, which helps brands understand the total value of a customer over their entire relationship with the brand.
So it's almost like reframing influencer marketing, Instead of just viewing it as this tactical way to boost sales, you're thinking about it as this potential long-term brand building strategy.
Exactly. It's about nurturing those customer relationships for the long haul. All right, let's keep unpacking these metrics. What about purchase intent?
Ah, yes. Even if someone doesn't immediately buy after seeing an influencer's post, are they showing signs of interest?
I like that.
Are they asking about the product, maybe messaging the brand or the influencer? Are they adding it to their wish list or even, pre-ordering it?
So it's recognizing that the return on investment from influencer marketing isn't always immediate.
Right. It can take time for that seed to grow.
Totally. Okay, and then there's cost per acquisition, or CPA.
Ah, yes. The all-important CPA.
But basically, how much does it cost to acquire each new customer through an influencer campaign?
That's all about efficiency, right?
Exactly. It's about making sure you're getting the most bang for your buck when it comes to those influencer collaborations.
I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have. But you know what? Talking about these metrics, in theory, is one thing.
Yeah.
But seeing how they play out in the real world,
right,
that's where it gets really interesting.
I agree. So what real-world example are we diving into?
Well, remember, I teased a case study earlier.
I do. You've got me on the edge of my seat.
Okay, get ready to dissect Tarte Cosmetics and that infamous Bora Bora influencer trip.
Ooh, that one. All right, let's do it.
Okay, so first, tell me your gut reaction when you first heard about this whole Bora Bora thing.
Honestly, I was kind of like, wow, that's a bold move. Sending all these influencers to this ridiculously beautiful location.
Right.
Tons of social media content. It definitely got people talking. But I also remember feeling like, is this really authentic? Is it actually going to resonate with their target audience?
Yeah, there was definitely a mixed bag of reactions. So let's unpack that.
Let's do it.
We're going to break down what worked, what didn't, and what brands can learn from this maybe slightly controversial approach.
I'm ready when you are.
Awesome. Let's dive in. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dissect this whole Tarte Cosmetics Bora Bora situation.
Yes, let's break it down. What can we actually learn about, measuring ROI from a campaign like this?
Right, because on the surface, it seemed like a pretty brilliant marketing move.
It did. I mean, stunning location, a whole bunch of popular influencers, tons of social media buzz. You'd think it would be a slam dunk.
And I bet their website traffic probably went through the roof during that time.
Oh, for sure. And, you can't deny that all that social media content probably led to at least some sales, right? People saw those influencers using those products in this paradise setting, and they probably wanted a piece of that.
Right. It's like aspirational marketing almost.
Totally. So when you think about those traditional ROI metrics, awareness, traffic, sales, Tarte probably did see some wins there.
But like we mentioned before, it wasn't all perfect, right? There were some pretty vocal criticisms about the whole trip.
Oh, definitely. And this is where those less tangible metrics come into play. Things like, brand sentiment. Did this campaign actually build long-term loyalty, or did it backfire?
Right, because even if you get a ton of buzz and maybe even a spike in sales, if it makes people feel like the brand is out of touch or inauthentic, that can hurt you in the long run.
Totally. Some people felt like that whole lavish trip was tone deaf, especially considering, what a lot of folks were going through financially at the time. So even if Tarte saw some short-term gains, you gotta wonder if it was worth the potential damage to their image.
Yeah, it's almost like there needs to be this balance, right, between those immediate, measurable results and that more long-term impact on how people perceive the brand.
Exactly. It's not just about chasing those quick wins. Brands really need to think about how a campaign will affect, brand sentiment, customer loyalty, even their overall reputation.
It seems like that's something a lot of brands are still struggling with, though, right? Figuring out how to measure those less tangible things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a challenge, but it's definitely becoming more and more important. Consumers are getting smarter, more aware of how influencer marketing works.
So they can spot a fake from a mile away.
Right. And they're looking for authenticity, which is something that Ninette Camarena, the marketing expert we interviewed, really emphasized. She talked about the importance of having clear expectations, a good brief between the brand and the influencer from the start.
Yeah, her insights were spot on.
Because when those expectations are clear, it's more likely that the influencer's content will actually feel authentic, aligned with the brand's values.
Right, because if it feels forced or inauthentic, consumers will see right through it, and then it just backfires.
Exactly. And speaking of authenticity, remember Nashla Bogert, the actress and influencer? She shared that really cool strategy of actually polling her followers to find out what brands they actually like.
Oh, yeah. That was so smart. Instead of just, promoting whatever brand comes along, she's making sure it's actually something her audience wants to see.
It's brilliant. It shows that she's really committed to aligning with her audience's needs, building that trust. And then there was Isabel Conde, our nano influencer, who gave us that on-the-ground perspective from, the influencer side.
Right.
And she highlighted how brands are increasingly focusing on, those metrics like engagement, reach, and of course, sentiment analysis.
It's like all these different perspectives, they're all coming back to this core idea of ROI, but with these different layers and nuances.
Exactly. I think that's the key takeaway here. Measuring ROI in influencer marketing, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. You got to consider all these different angles, the tangible and the intangible impacts of a campaign.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways you want our listeners to walk away with, especially as they're navigating this whole influencer marketing world?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, first and foremost, authenticity rules.
Oh, yeah, that's been a recurring theme for sure.
Consumers, they crave those genuine connections, that relatable content. So brands need to find influencers who actually embody their values and who resonate with their target audience.
Right. It's not just about chasing follower counts or going after the biggest names. It's about finding the right fit.
Exactly. And like we've been talking about, measurement is crucial.
Oh, yeah. Got to track those metrics.
You got to understand how those influencer campaigns are actually impacting those business goals, right? But ROI in influencer marketing, it's a complex puzzle. It's not just about immediate sales.
Right. It's about looking at the bigger picture.
You got to consider brand awareness, engagement, traffic generation, and even those long-term relationships with customers. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
I like that.
And finally, never underestimate the importance of being culturally sensitive and ethical. Transparency and compliance are not just buzzwords. They are essential for building trust with your audience.
So building that sustainable and responsible approach to influencer marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think with that, we've pretty much covered the ins and outs of ROI and influencer marketing.
We've explored the theories, the challenges, the ethical considerations, and of course, this crazy, ever-changing landscape of influencer marketing. Hopefully, our deep divers out there have gleaned some, valuable insights they can put into action. It's funny, as we've been talking about all these different metrics in that Part case study.
Yeah.
I keep coming back to, how do you really know what's working when it comes to influencer marketing?
Yeah.
Because it's not always those, super obvious measurable results, right?
It's true. It's definitely not like those traditional ad campaigns, where you can just track those clicks and conversions and boom, there's your answer. Influencer marketing, it's more about these subtle changes in how people feel about the brand, how engaged they are, and it's definitely a long game, building those relationships.
So how do brands deal with that?
Yeah.
How do they justify spending all this money when those returns aren't always immediate?
I think it's about shifting their mindset. They got to stop thinking of influencer marketing as this quick fix or some magic bullet that's going to instantly boost sales. It's more about playing the long game.
Yeah, building those authentic connections with influencers, nurturing those relationships with their audiences, and creating content that really resonates over time.
Right. It's about understanding that sometimes the most valuable returns are the ones that you can't just plug into a spreadsheet.
Like brand loyalty and positive sentiment, right?
Exactly. So it's not just a transactional exchange. Influencer marketing, when it's done right, is an investment in building the brand.
And I think our interview with Isabella Conde really highlighted that. How brands are starting to pay more attention to metrics like engagement and sentiment analysis, really trying to understand the impact beyond those surface-level numbers.
It's about going beyond those vanity metrics, digging into the qualitative data, like, are people leaving thoughtful comments? Are they sharing the content with their friends? Are they actually saying good things about the brand? Because that's how you know the campaign's making a real connection.
And those connections are what lead to that brand loyalty and, yeah, eventually those sales conversions.
It's a chain reaction. It's like planting a seed and watching it grow.
Oh, I like that analogy. It really emphasizes that influencer marketing isn't a one-and-done thing. It takes time, consistency, and really understanding who you're trying to reach.
Absolutely. You got to nurture those relationships.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to something that came up a few times in our research.
Okay. What's that?
The idea that brands should be using these influencer strategies for, more than just pushing products.
Oh, I know what you mean. It's about using that influence for good.
Yeah. It can be such a powerful tool for raising awareness about important issues, actually making a difference in the world. So much more than just trying to get people to buy stuff.
Absolutely. It's about making a positive impact.
So as we close out this deep dive, that's the thought I want to leave our listeners with. You have the power to create influencer marketing campaigns that are not just effective, but also meaningful and responsible.
Choose your partners wisely, make content that connects with people, and always, always strive to make a positive impact.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, deep divers, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries.